The ideals of the ancient Olympics. Hello, this is Justin Butts with your Wholesome Heritage Garden. For the Olympic athletes in Sochi, nutrition is a science and diet is a central focus of the competitors. Diet was just as important to the first Olympians some 2,700 years ago, and for ancient Greeks, food was about much more than nutrition. Ancient Olympians ate simple foods, mutton, beef, goat, and fish. They ate a lot of dried fruit, especially figs. They ate a flatbread made of wheat or barley. Honey was their sweetener, and Greeks loved their wine and olive oil. Athletes actually bathed themselves in olive oil before competitions. One of the original Olympians, Milo of Croton, the greatest wrestler of ancient Greece, made food history. Milo picked up a 4-year-old bull and carried it around the stadium on his shoulders in front of 50,000 screaming spectators. Then he butchered it, cooked it, and ate the entire thing in front of his fans. But Milo was the exception. The diet of ancient athletes was simple, but the purity of their food was of paramount importance. The ideal of Greek philosophy was perfection in forms, perfect laws, perfect statues, perfect athletes. To achieve this ideal, the components must first be perfected. Sculptors, for this reason, went to great lengths to obtain the finest marble for their statues of the gods. Athletes likewise demanded the purest foods in their diet to build their muscles, to chisel their bodies. The farmers considered themselves artisans, no less than sculptors. Their tools were sun, rain, seed, and soil. Farmers, like the athletes they partnered with, strived for greatness. Food was not only an art to Greeks, food was an offering to the gods. The first cuts of meat were placed on the fire as a sacrifice to Zeus, and the prayers of the champions mixed with the rising smoke. Only the purest food was fit for such athletes or such a sacrifice. At the ruins in ancient Olympia, the site of the original games, I walked down a long wall of beautiful stone panels telling about the crops and the livestock of the cities of Greece and how this food nourished the champions of antiquity. Those farmers are lost to history, but you can still read the names of their champions chiseled into the stone. Those names represent the highest achievement of ancient Greece: perfect art, perfect food, perfection in physical forms. And these are the ideals the athletes of today seek in Sochi. More information is available at fourstringfarm.me. This is Justin Butts with your Wholesome Heritage Garden. The floating gardens of the Aztecs. Hello, this is Justin Butts with your Wholesome Heritage Garden. When Cortez discovered the Aztec Empire, he found 200,000 people living on an island in the middle of a lake. Tenochtitlan, now Mexico City, was the biggest and best-fed city in the world, and this fortress city was completely surrounded by water. To feed their enormous population, the Aztecs ingeniously built chinampas, or floating gardens, to convert the marshy wetlands of Lake Texcoco into arable farmland. These floating gardens were a masterpiece of engineering. Each garden was 300 feet long by 30 feet wide. To make a garden, workers weaved sticks together to form a giant raft and then piled mud from the bottom of the lake on top of the raft to create a layer of soil 3 feet thick. The rectangular gardens were anchored to the lake by willow trees planted at the corners. Each garden was lined on all sides by canals to allow canoes to pass with workers and materials. This network of gardens extended for 22,000 acres across the surface of the lake. The floating gardens were companion planted with corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, peppers, and flowers, and these incredible gardens yielded 7 crops per year. The Aztec religion was a cult of sacrifice, and the gods were fearsome. The victims of sacrifice, standing on top of the Great Pyramid, could see the floating green gardens in the distance, with the sun sparkling on the lake, and then their hearts were cut out and roasted in a fire. Tens of thousands of heads rolled down the stone steps of those pyramids, and the rivers that turned the temples red in the noonday sun were a plea to the gods to keep the gardens growing. But in the end, when the sky went dark over Tenochtitlan and the earth shook beneath the feet of Montezuma, it was not the sun god who brought judgment. It was the conquistadors. The Spaniards' military advantages over the Aztecs, the swords, guns, and horses, were nullified in the sanctuary of the floating gardens, and Cortez was covetous of gold, not Indian corn, so he ordered the destruction of the Chinampas. The floating gardens of the Aztecs, the key to their great civilization, were torn to pieces by the hands that built them and thrown to the bottom of the lake, never to rise again. More information is available at fourstringfarm.me. This is Justin Butts with your Wholesome Heritage Garden. Breaking down a tomato. Hello, this is Justin Butts with your Wholesome Heritage Garden. Farming methods can raise or lower the nutritional value of produce. Planting techniques influence nutrition. We can see this by following a tomato through a large-scale conventional farm compared to a tomato grown in your own backyard garden. On large-scale farms, tomatoes are fertilized with synthetic chemicals. These chemicals cover the basic NPK requirements for plants, but often fail to replace the micronutrients that tomatoes demand from the soil. In your garden, your own homemade compost builds healthy, humus-rich soil that replenishes the full profile of vitamins and minerals that your plants require. On large-scale farms, growers select tomato varieties that ripen quickly and simultaneously for ease of machine harvesting. These fast-growing varieties can actually outpace the ability of the plant's root system to absorb nutrients from the soil. Big farms also select for varieties that produce large, roughly square-shaped tomatoes. These square-shaped tomatoes fit more easily into packing containers and thereby reduce transportation costs. In your garden, tomato varieties are chosen primarily for health and flavor. On large-scale farms, tomatoes are picked unripe before vitamins, minerals, and lycopene are fully maximized in the fruit. Once tomatoes are harvested, they stop absorbing lycopene. Lycopene is an antioxidant, and we want the highest dose of this cancer-fighting compound in every bite of tomato. In your garden, tomatoes are picked ripe and red on the vine, with the maximum concentration of lycopene fully developed in the fruit. Potassium is an essential mineral in plant health, and it is critical to human health as well. The best way for people to get potassium is through their food, and the best way for plants to get this mineral is from the soil. On large-scale farms, the plants themselves are treated with industrial applications of potassium. In your garden, potassium and other minerals are added to the soil through compost and homemade wood ash, the ideal source for plants. Moreover, the sweetness of a tomato, actually the flavor of any fruit or vegetable, is the result of potassium. Potassium molecules unlock the sugars in plants, and when more natural potassium is available in the soil, more sweetness develops in the fruit. It is easy to taste the difference in your own ripe, red, freshly picked tomatoes, but the differences in health are just as great and just as important, and your own garden is the perfect place to get the sweetest taste and the greatest health from your produce. More information is available at fourstringfarm.me. This is Justin Butts with your Wholesome Heritage Garden.